digital learning. Yeah, in this course already we have covered mm, all the topics previously, like the introduction of RESTful web services, fundamentals of REST API. So these things already we covered in the previous videos. So please go through the previous videos and learn all the basic syntax, what is web service and what is the service architectures, the fundamentals of the RESTful API. Okay, so please go through the previous videos. And the today topic, our agenda is key architectural principles like what is the statelessness, what is the client server architecture, uniform interface, resource based communications, and stateless communication, layered architecture implementation. So these are the basic theory concepts actually. What is the key architectural principles, how we can achieve it. So what is the meaning wise, the statelessness, what is it, definition, and how we can understand client server architecture, how we can imagine our imaginations into the practical implementation. So how it will work, the client application and the server application, how to share the data from the client to server to the request, how we can process it. So if you want to communicate client and server, client application, server application, a remote application, so we need the URL link or URI, unified resource interface or unified resource locator. So here we have the uniform interface principle, how we can implement it. So this is the resource based implementation. The resource based implementation. So how we can communicate to the resource, the business logic. Okay. So statelessness and stateless communication both I will explain in the single example. And the layered architecture, how we can implement the piece of code. So we are seeing the business logic, front end and back end. So what is the application layer? What is the service layer? What is the client layer? So how it will communicate to the one layer on the layer. So these things I will explain the diagrammatically. So our agenda is key architectural principles, the explanation in detailed way with examples or diagrams. We can use it. See, first of all, what is the web service actually? So why we need the web service? So example, I have one application here. You can say this is the Sublime Text, and otherwise we have the Chrome application. That is a Chrome is one application, and you need to communicate to the other services like banking application or e-commerce applications like Amazon, Flipkart. So etc. we have a number of applications. Now the Chrome is working as a to search the your requirement, either banking service, either e-commerce service or education, different means the Chrome application we have the client request. Chrome application have the client request. So through the client request to we need to search. Example, you are searching for the Amazon. So Amazon application have the specific URL link, what we can call URL, Unified Resource Locator. That is unique URL link. So for that part also we have here, you can see the uniform resource identifier or uniform resource locator. Okay. Uniform resource locator or identifier. So what is this? Means unique URL link. We can call the unique. So worldwide we have all the URL links in unique. There is no duplicate URL links. So uniform resource locator, uniform resource interface. How we can communicate it? How we can implement and how we can communicate. So the client means end user give the request, it will go to the server to. So what are the URL links we have? So the different. The same way here I have given the example. So the statelessness and we have the architectural styles here. Just I have given the, so this is a simple basic theory. What is the client server diagram pattern? Okay. So what is the agenda of our main fundamentals of the REST API. So what is the audience? So I given the objective here. Just what is the REST representation state transfer protocols? Every protocol of the REST API is a statelessness only. There is no stateful. Stateful is nothing but, so if you give the request here, you can see the request. So here you can see the request. We have the previous request storage here. We have the previous request storage, and we have the next request carry forward. Means somewhere we are storing the user information or user request, somewhere we are storing and maintaining the stateful of the user's data. So example, you need to store the your username password somewhere. Instead of going to your server side, you can store in the client side application. You can go for the all of the cookies. We have the catchable data. We can store the seasonized user information, authentication, authorization. These things comes under the stateful. Stateless means there is no information about the previous request. Previous request. If I go for the back or next, there is no storage of the previous request. What you given the request for the or application. So there is no storage for the user or anything. So that is by default REST API is a stateless protocols. So what are the key principles we have actually? So uniform interface and statelessness or stateless protocols, catchable or client server architecture designing, layered architecture implementation, layered system implementation. These all things we have the principles of the REST API implementation to achieve the key implementation of client and resource and client communication. How we can do it. Okay. So what is the uniform interface? What is stateless? This all things I will give the explanation clearly and diagrammatically. So first of all, I'm giving the one simple REST API architecture. So here the Android application, iPhone application or browser, web, anything, what are the search application we are using, the search items in front of us, it is visible clear to the human beings. Enter username, submit data, register forms, authentications and authorizations. These are things client applications. How we can implement this? Either HTML, CSS, JSP, Angular, React, Vue, different front end technology we will use to implement the front end technology. So from there, if you want to create the your username and password, so here you can see the post request. Either Android phone with the post, we can create iPhone with the post, we can create browser with the post, we can create the information. So it is the business application. It is client side, it is business layer. It is the server side, it is client side. Simple way I'm giving. It is server side, it is client side. The request is coming from the client to server, and either we have HTTP protocols, either put, get, post, or delete, either patch, use different HTTP protocols we have. So among this, which one you are selecting? So once if we create the user data in the business logic with the business logic, again we will give the confirmation message to the end user. That means back to the client. So again, if you go give the one more request, it won't store the information of the previous user information. That is the statelessness. Everything in our REST API protocols is statelessness. There is no storage. So that's the reason statelessness we are explaining clearly. So once again, I'm giving with the diagrammatically. So here you can see the, so what is the statelessness? In REST architecture, statelessness is a communication method where the server completes the each client request independently of previous request. It means we are not storing the any info about previous user or previous request. So we have the client emission, either mobile phone, laptop, desktop, or any browser applications or any applications front end. So giving the HTTP request to the API, REST API, it will go to the server. Again, the server is giving the response back to the user. Request and response. So here in REST, the REST is nothing but represent state transfer protocol. It is stateless protocols. Statelessness means that the client is responsible for storing and handling the sessions related information. but the server does not store any state about the client session on the server side. So because of the server does not store any state about the client session on the server side. So that protocol we are calling stateless protocols. We are not storing any information about the users, previous users. Every request is a fresh request. Every request is a new request. Simply. Okay. That is statelessness principle. So for better understanding purpose, I have given the few more points here. What is the data? The REST APIs are stateless because instead of relying on the server remembering previous request, if you remember the previous request means we need to store the some data. For storing, it will take the application size more. Application size is increasing, the more storage, the performance of the application will be very less. So the REST applications require each request to contain all of the information necessary for the server to understand it. Means we need the, it is easier to centrally maintain the interface at the server side, and it reduces the concerns about inconsistencies in deployed clients when functionality is extended. So there is a different storage and we are expecting the different one. So there is ambiguity. There is a confusion between the old data and the new request extended formats. It improves efficiency because less application memory, more performance. More application storage, less performance. So that's the reason. Interacts make use of extended session context on the server side. So it is very simple. If you go for the any state, we can call the stateful. Statefulness is different. What we discussed now, stateful is nothing but what I told. It will store the information about the user data somewhere in the client application and the web application. So example, stateful application example I'm giving here. An example of a stateful API is an online shopping cart. Amazon cart, add the item to the cart, and Flipkart add the item to the cart. So it will store your request, and if you log in, whenever you log in, there is a cart items will be stored automatically. So that is a stateful data. Statefulness means there is no information. If you add the data also, statefulness, it won't keep your request once if you refresh the browser. That is every time it is fresh request. So I hope understanding. So statefulness and statelessness. You can see the stateless communication or statelessness. So both are same. So this is a simple diagram and information about the statelessness. Okay, the key principles. The next one we have client server architecture. Client server architecture. So we can take the example of the client server architecture. This is also one example. And I have given the client server architecture. This one also one example. Okay. So here I'm giving the client server architecture. If you want to communicate, example, I have the Chrome application. If I want to open any website like Amazon or Flipkart or anything, if you want to open, or if you want to open the library, so online library, so anything, if you want to open, we need the URL link actually. Example, I'm opening the well-known e-commerce. You guys know Flipkart or Amazon, anything you can take it. Flight ticket, anything, okay. Flipkart. Just if you open the Flipkart, so here you can see the URL link. That URL link is a unified URL link. There is no duplicate URL link. Flipkart 1, Flipkart 2, different companies. Okay, here you can see the different items we can able to get to the client side again. We given the request to the server is giving the response back to the your desktop. That is maybe either you are using the mobile phone or desktop, which one you are using, or what type of browser you are using. So based upon your requirement. The same way, the client here you can see the client server architecture is nothing but we are giving the request to the your application. So you can see the client server architecture. So we are giving the request to the any device from Android phone, iPhone, desktop, Windows, anything web app. Giving the request to the your protocol. So that is a protocol is nothing but so online shopping cart, that is the Flipkart.com. It is protocol. From database, it will loads the data. Either if you have the business logic from there, it will loads the data and giving response back to the where you are requesting the protected URL link. That is URI, Unified Resource Interface, or Unified or Uniform Resource Interface, or Uniform Resource Locator. That is unique URL link. You'll get response back. So means here the client side application is different, server side application is different. The interactive between the remotely. So my mobile phone is there in the one location, but Google server is in the one location. So Amazon cloud is one location, but we are communicating to the different regions, different data with the help of client server architecture implementation with URL links. That is uniform resource locator, uniform resource interface. Okay, those are unique data. Now you can say REST APIs use a client server architecture, which means that the client and the server interact in one way. Okay, how we can interact? So the client sends a request, okay, and the server sends a response back to the client. If it is valid, URL link valid, URI or URL. So the client and the server work independently from each other. So different locations. Servers cannot make request to and clients cannot respond. So from client will give the request and service will give the response back. So with the help of the client server architecture, what we can achieve? The scalability and flexibility and portability. So how we can scalability means different URL links we can make easier to the developers can communicate to the remote applications, remote services very easily. Okay. Flexible in nature, wherever you want to deploy it will work. Portable in nature, all the platforms will work it. The client server architecture. Okay. So all the REST API protocols are stateless protocols, and the client server architecture is nothing but communicating to the client application and the server application through URI or URL. That is uniform interface principle. So communicating to the remote resource or remote database, we need the unified URL links. So that is what type of data you are getting. So from the client to server, server to client, what type of data we are communicating. That is media type, MIME media type. So either JSON format or XML format or HTML format, plain text format, different formats of data we have. We will give the response back to the end user as per the requirement. So how we are implementing that? This is client server architecture principal information. Okay. Next, coming to the another agenda, another point. So uniform interface. Just now we discussed about the client and server. Client is one application, server is one application. If you want to communicate that client and server, we need the uniform interface locator, uniform interface URL link. So we have written that is URL link, URL link. So with the help of that, we can communicate. So now you can see that here a uniform interface is a key content that differentiates a REST API from a non-REST API. So it defines a way for client to interact with a server regardless of the device or application type. So it is not the mission to mission, it is application to application communication through URL links. Uniform interface. What we discussed from the beginning. So here we given the same story. Here also we given the same story. Right? Here also the uniform resource interface. Now, the identification of resources, Google resources, Amazon resources, Flipkart resources, company resources, different URLs will use the resource as URIs. Okay. With the help of that, we can interact the application to application, client application to server application, and we can share the data and we can get the response from the server to client side. So interactive way with URL links, what type of data you are expecting, that type of service we will give the response back to the end users. Manipulation of the resources through representations. So either JSON format data, XML format of data, if you want to update your resource or if you want to delete the resources, we can do the manipulations. Self-descriptive messages is nothing but we have HTTP protocols. HTTP get, we can read the data from the resources. Post, we can create the resource in the database where we are storing the data. Put, update the resource. Delete the record from the resource where you store the data. The media types catchability. Different approaches we can achieve it. So HTOS is the hypermedia as the engine. So application state. what are the APIs, okay, so what are authentications. So these all things we can give the access to our applications, authorization, authentication through the hypermedia. Again, we can achieve the security also. The uniform interface provides a fixed set of for operations for creating a data, reading the data, updating the data, and deleting the resources. Get is a read, put is update, post is creating, delete is removing the data from the resources. These restrictions ensures that interfaces are clean, uncluttered, and universally understood. It is not only for the one location, one region. So universally, who are using the REST API implementation as a developer. So these things are common. For put method for the update purpose, get for read the information, post for creating, delete for the remove the data. So these are the common for the universally and the locally or company wise. So what is uniform interface? Nothing but to communicate any data, identification of the resources. See, a uniform interface is a key constant that differentiates a REST API from a non-REST API. It identifies a way for a client to interact with a server using URL links. So I have given the simple Flipkart or Amazon anything. Okay. So like this, if you want to communicate, we need the uniform interface concept, the design principle, URL link or URI. So HTTP, yes, or HTTP, www.google.com, www.amazon.com, www.flipkart.com. These are the URIs. Or your application, CRM, bank, anything. So I hope understanding what is uniform interface. Then resource-based communication, resource-based design, the implementation. So what is the resource-based? So what is the resource? Update the resource, create the resource, delete the resource. What is the resource here actually? Okay. So coming to the resource, here you can see the different architecture I'm making, but here also same it will come where the data we are storing. So what is the client, what is the server, what is the service we are implementing. Okay. Now see, a service based means a resource based API is used to facilitate conversations between the businesses and users or remote systems. Example, we have one application. That application is giving the data to the users. Example, you are storing the just now we open Flipkart. So Flipkart is just website. That website is loading the data. So what are the informations they are providing? So you can see the URL links category. So each and every category they have the data. This data is loading from the database and displaying on loading web page, on web page loading. So it will loads the data from the resource displaying here. Right. If you want to book the flights, you can see the appliances, travel. So the travel API they will store the information about the flights and destinations. So while selecting the our data, it will consume. So where you need to the destination and arrival. So what is the date and time? So these things you can select it. So these are the resources loading from the server side to client side. It is client application what we are seeing in front of us, that is a client, and behind that we have the business logic. Business logic is giving the business layer a database data to client, giving the request and getting back to the response, request and response. That is here the service example. The get user protocol buffers compiler. So means what type of request we are expecting, either travel, either so goods, different electronics devices, right? We have the different operations here. If you go for the so Flipkart application, okay, travel, Flipkart travel. If you go for the home page, there is a different services. Okay, the same way. So loads the data. So here we have the server side. What type of data? Service means either user class and maybe there is a database or different services giving back to the server side artifacts. The server side artifacts is getting to the client side artifact, and the client side artifact is giving back to the response to the your business logic. Finally, all the communication, all the loading the data, the response giving back to the client. the get user request class and response back to the client. Means we have the resource, from the resource to client we are communicating the data with the help of uniform resource interface or uniform resource locator, either URI or URL. Okay, this simple resource based API to facilitate conversation between the business logic and users to give the information. Now you can see a REST API is a common design pattern for web and mobile applications. REST stands for Representative State Transfer Protocols. Okay, and here what we are doing includes elements like resource naming, caching, and versioning. Versioning in the sense, so first version v 1.0, 1.2, 1.3, like that we can do the versioning also. The REST API has a three components. You can see URL endpoint. With the help of the URL link, we can communicate our resources, images, document, JSON data, PDF file, Excel sheet, how we are expecting the data. HTTP verb. So what is the google.com or online shopping? You can see the travel. If you select for the travel, so there is a URL link will be travel, URL link it will be displayed here. Okay, travel. If you go for the complete home page, you will get the complete URL link, the verbs. Okay, HTTP verb stands for the HTTP verb to perform operations on the resources. You need the only travel, you need the only kitchen items, electronics, or lifestyle. So what type of URL link you are selecting? The verbs. Okay. So the body of the REST API will be display what you are requesting. See the most common operations we are discussing about get, post, put, delete, and patch. These are okay. API gateways. So for achieving this application, the implementation of the applications, example I'm showing here. So what is the resource and these all things. See example I have the one Spring Boot with REST API implementation. I have the source application, accounts source application and accounts client application. I have the source and client application. So what I will do here, just I'm running the main method class. Just I'm running main method class. Okay, just run it. So for this, what is the URL or URI? So I have the controller layer here. I'm displaying the all the home page first, then accounts list, accounts by details. Means list of all accounts, account by number. Means one account. Here is all the accounts, verbs and verb. How we can give the list of all the data and list of one record. Okay, so start the API gateway also. So here I'm running the just run Eureka server, that is the API gateway consumption. It is Spring Boot with REST API microservice environment application. So once if we start the application, then we can observe what is the URL link for our applications and how we can communicate it. So it is very simple. Application started here. The port number 8080. Very simple. So once if you run the API gateways, we have the API service means URL link 1, URL link 2, URL link 3. So we have URI verbs, HTTP verbs. You can see the simple way to so HTTP verb, standard HTTP verb used to perform the operations and resource, how we can communicate. Okay, just see the one URL link I'm running the application, that is working application. Okay, start on the port number, 1111 is the port number. So just you can see it. In place of flipkart.com localhost 1111. It is Eureka server. So it is URL link URI. Now we have the client and resource. Means one is the resource provider, one is the client consumer. So if I run the source provider, this is the source provider. Okay, service provider, what we can call source data or service provider, service consumer. You can see the service consumer, 2222 port number. So the URL link is, so it is URL link accounts microservice. We are providing the data. So giving all the records, that is default accounts. Accounts is giving all the account numbers. If I go for the accounts in place of that account, there is a specific account number. Only one record we can get it. It is verbs, URL link verbs. We are giving the request. It is a client now. Giving the request to our resource. Resource is giving means server is giving the response back. Client is requesting the request. Okay, so the same get method. So you can observe it. What is the get method here? So account controller. You can see the request mapping. By default is a get method. HTTP get method. For understanding, I will show the get methods also. How we can implement in the REST APIs. So you can take any application. So you can see them. So post mapping is a post method. Get mapping is a get method. Okay, and put mapping for the put method. So different how you are implementing the data. So Spring REST Hibernate, Spring REST collections. So you can see the controller here, employee controller. So post mapping, get mapping to read the data, post mapping to create the data, put mapping update the data, delete mapping to remove the data. So these are the protocols, HTTP protocols, and these are the URL links, URI, what we can call verb, URL links or URI. Okay, so this is very simple, basic concept actually. Once if we implement hands-on applications, then definitely we'll get to know. So what is the resource application and client applications, these are things. So we have covered statelessness, client server architecture, uniform interface, and resource based communication, and stateless communication and statelessness both are same. Laid architecture, laid architecture. So what is the laid architecture? So for understanding purpose, I have given the laid architecture is a diagrammatically. So the laid system is nothing but you can see we have the server is the business logic, client is the front end logic. If you want to communicate to the server side, we are using the REST API protocol, that is a gateway APIs, what we can call gateway APIs. So from client to gateway API to the specific application, either employee operation and product operations, travel operations, kitchen items. If you go for the Flipkart, e-commerce applications, lifestyle, different services, different service URL links. So here we need to implement the application in the splitted in the source, the code splitted into the piece of codes, piece of layers. Instead of implementing all the client and business logic and the models and in one location, we will split into the different packages and different layers. So that layer is we can call here is a presentation layer and the API layer and business layer. So that is API communication to the business, business to the API again client layer, or we can go client side business logic and repository logic means DAO logic and server logic. So different database logic, how we can implement it. So you can see the interaction layer, presentation layer, integration layer, API gateways, and application layer, business logic. So information to the database, that is database layers. So each layer have their own importance. So example, I'm giving the light architecture application real-time implementation. Here you can see the so Spring REST API. Just now we saw the different layers here. Spring Boot REST Hibernate. Spring Boot REST Hibernate. So here you can see the architecture. So DAO layer and controller layer and implementation layer, entities in a model or pose layers, exceptions layer, repository layer, service layer, and to test the application we have the Swagger documentation, API testing, we will use the Swagger API. So this many layers we implemented. So layer wise communication. All are implemented independently and communicating in integrated way. So through URL links or through object reference, you will communicate it. That is layer attached is nothing but piece of code dedicatedly we are implementing the separate layer, the separate package. So all the things one location we can implement, but instead of implementing all the logic in one location, you will get the ambiguity problem. So which logic where it is implemented. So layer attached is a very clean and neat implementation. Single line answer. So this is simple key principles of REST API architectural designing. So that is fundamentals of the REST API and what is the definition of the REST API and key architectural principles, how we can implement our RESTful web service applications. What are the principles we have? Each and every principle, how we can utilize that, where we can apply. So what is the statelessness understanding? What is the client server architecture understandability? And uniform resource, uniform interface, resource based, stateless communications, and layer architecture. So the RESTful resources are there. This we will get another video, and for up to key principles can understood. Even we have covered what is the URI. So examples of the RESTful URIs we can implement one example so that you can understand the what is the resources and everything. That's the reason the naming convention also how we can give the URL naming conventions. These things we will give it. So as of now, so this is simple key architectural principles of RESTful web service implementation. Take cares. What you have to take. So while implementing the application, you have to remember layer architecture, what is the purpose, and the statelessness communication, what is use of that, and what is the resource-based communication, and uniform interface in URL and URI, what is this, how to implement client-server communications, the architecture, how we can communicate client application to server, server to client. Okay, what is the statelessness protocols? Okay, so these are the things. Statelessness, how we can differentiate, and what is the client server architecture design structure and a few points. So what is the uniform interface URL link, how we can take the URL link, what type of media type, either in the XML format or JSON format. So here you can see the we have mentioned what type of data we are giving, application JSON, application XML, application HTML, like this we can change the as per the requirement. Okay, so the representations of the resource, what are the HTTP methods, what is the ATOs, hypermedia engines, And what is resource based API communication? So client to server, server to client, how we can communicate it, how we can set the data. So what is the media type? Okay. And how we can implement that URL link endpoints, and what is the keywords we need to take care. So what type of data we are sharing. So these all things. So what is the layer architecture? So I hope it is clear. So if anyone have the confusion or any doubts from your side, okay, we'll take a head. You can write a mail or you can chat in our chat box. Definitely we'll give the response back to the solution. 100% clarity. Okay, thank you.